Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're just see a few people joining at the moment. So yeah, thank you for being here. We're excited for this two-part series with Alli Krug. Today is part one, Bridge Building, Advocating for Your Child as the Transcendent Third. And as everybody is joining the session, you'll see a QR code on this screen. Please feel free to use your phone to scan the QR code or use the bit.ly below it to participate in an interactive polling platform that Alli has set up. That way, she can ask everybody questions in real time and make it a really interactive, meaningful session. So there's the QR code there. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we really dive into everything. We are recording this and we will record it until we do some exercises and a Q&A at the very end, but we will let you know when the recording has stopped. Alli has generously told us that she's willing to stay a little bit past the hour mark. We understand if you need to leave at the hour mark, but if you're able to stay a little bit longer and there are more questions or topics to go over, she's happy to stay a little bit longer. If you have any urgent questions, please feel free to use the Q&A Q&A option in the Zoom. And we're gonna get started in just a moment. I am Lori Mittermiller. I'm a staff member at IEA. I'm a program coordinator that primarily works on our academy program. And I'm going to now introduce Nicole Fugit.
Hello, I am a senior program manager here at the Institute for Educational Advancement. You'll know me if you've been involved with the Academy program or the UNASA program. I manage both of those as well as Explore. So I am involved in all sorts of different things and around here, and I've been working at IEA for about 9 years. It's been a while now. Yeah, I'll share just a little bit about IEA if this is your first experience with us. We have been around in Pasadena, California since 1998. We're a nonprofit organization, and we are both nationwide and local. So we support gifted kids right here in our own backyard in Pasadena through the Academy program, which is enrichment classes, and the Explore program for high school kids, as well as our partnership with our local school district, PUSD, Pasadena Unified, where we run free of charge innovation clubs for STEM involvement and support. And then we also work nationally through our Carolyn D. Bradley Scholarship, which is a scholarship to attend a high school of choice. It is need, blind, and merit-based, where students apply in the 7th grade. And then we also have UNASA, which is a sleepaway summer camp that supports gifted kids in a non-academic way. So it helps them find balance through mindfulness and helping with anxiety and perfectionism and other things that can often come up for gifted kids when they can feel on the spot for their intellect or like there's pressure. We help them find balance through the other parts of who they are. And then we also do some professional development for educators. And as you're involved in this session right now, you can see that we do parent support groups and events as well.
Great, thanks, Nicole. Oops, sorry, one moment. Oops. Are you seeing the?
It's not moving right now.
Sorry, 1 second. Oops, there we go.
There.
Okay. So yeah, thank you for joining us today. We are so excited for Alli to be here today, and I'll just give a quick introduction before I let her take it away. So, Alli Krug is first and foremost a wife and mother who is grateful for every day with her intense family. She is an epidemiologist, published academic author, and certified mindset and performance coach who loves running, hiking, and working with horses. She's often found doing novel parking lot workouts while traveling with her son for ice hockey. Allie loves learning from everyone she meets and looks forward to connecting with you today. So I will go ahead and hand it over to Allie. Oh, I think you're on mute, Allie.
Unmuted and hopefully about to begin this presentation. Hi, everybody. Lori, I love the grace and composure that you have when you're doing tech things. I really admire you. And we were talking about anxiety and perfectionism. I don't suffer from any of those. No, my heart isn't pounding right now, hoping that this is a meaningful and engaging experience for you all. Lori and I are trying something new with this Mentimeter. I've seen it used and it was just so interesting. So yeah, I see some people already jumping on and responding. Don't feel like you need to if you're listening while you're driving. I know some of you folks might be just want to express my gratitude to you for showing up today and joining us with curiosity about how best to serve your child and advocate for their needs at school. And I am so grateful for this opportunity to join with you and IEA to offer this to you. And I'm really grateful for Lori and Cheryl and to Deborah for all of their support as we've come together to really discern what is going to be most useful for you. And you're part of that journey today. So all of the, hi, I see this and thumbs up. You're using learning how to use this. There's a little heart thing too, and to the far right, there's a little Q&A thing, and that should allow you to type in questions, which we will see throughout, and we will also see at the very end. We have a dedicated Q&A time. You can upvote questions if you want. I understand. We've not fully tested this because we didn't have an audience yet. So you are helping us figure out, yep, I see one's loading, yay. So we will be able to see how this all works. It's great to see you all here. I'm going to jump into the next slide. I think that you can stay though on your phones if you're not yet done putting your pins on there. I think that you can probably stay and keep dropping your pins. All right, we'll see how that works. So this is just a little bit about my family. I have a 17-year-old, nearly 18-year-old son. He's the one on the bottom left here, splitting wood. That's when he was 5. He's a hockey player. Both my sons have played hockey. My younger son is also the one you can see hauling me away at a hockey rink. Our older son prefers not to be in photographs. He's extremely private, and he loves Rubik's Cubes. He's the one that was building these 3D domino structures you see in this picture. And my husband in the top right there really enjoys strategy games, like incredible strategy games. These take 12 hours. I will not be caught anywhere near that room. I need to be in motion, splitting wood, as you can see in my crazy outfit. So our family has a lot going on, a lot of intensities, and it is just an absolute gift to be with them and to learn from them. Truly, that's the most meaningful thing for me, is to have learned from my children. I learn every day. Today, I asked both kids about perfectionism, which we'll touch on later, and their take on it. So I know that's a challenge that we're all kind of working through. Just a tiny bit about my background in advocacy, because that is, after all, why we're here today, to talk about building bridges with your children's school. And I have, this is the last slide I actually added. It didn't occur to me to tell you a little bit about what I had done. So you might be curious where I've traveled and what kinds of things, challenges have presented themselves. From the very beginning, and you'll hear this in one of the slides, from the very beginning, I've chosen to get deeply involved in the school to learn about the challenges that teachers face in the classroom, the challenges that administrators face at the building level and the district level and even the state level. And we also are a military family, so I had an opportunity to interact with senior leadership in the Dodea school system and understand their challenges serving a global classroom. And that was during the pandemic. So my heart really is one of great compassion and understanding for the challenges of professional educators. But I'm also a parent of 2E, gifted 2E students who have, let's face it, had a tough time with school. And you'll hear more about that. And if you choose at the very end, the choose your adventure part of this, I'm very happy to share a few more of our experiences. But I've been deeply involved every step of the way in trying to learn through immersion and understanding what the challenges are, right? That seek first to understand before being understood. That has been basically how I've tried to parent and advocate for my kids. So here in this slide, I just wanted to reflect for a minute on what we heard from all of you in the RSVPs. Thank you so much. We have more than 100 people registered for this, and more than half of you took the time to actually type out an RSVP and let us know what was on your mind. I went through and did a rhetorical analysis to really understand what was coming up for you and your families. And what I heard, if I could digest it, was three paradoxes. This is at least what I saw. Very often I see paradoxes, so maybe these won't make too much sense to you, or maybe you'll resonate quite strongly with them. But this approach versus avoid, like this sincere desire to create novelty, to embrace discovery, and in particular self-discovery, new learning, and yet there's this part of us that shrinks away from new challenges. So that can create a lot of internal turmoil and ambivalence. And that can show up as decisions not made. It could show up as procrastination. It might even show up as laziness. Um, Excellence versus anxiety. So I see this in my kids, just such a high bar for excellence. And yet, anxiety that comes chasing along like the shadow all the time. Because what if I can't live up to my own standards? And then challenge versus comfort, like a true desire for intellectual challenge, for physical challenge, for those of you who are raising athletes. And yet also a desire, especially as very young kids, for comfort and emotional safety with their parents. My older son here is pictured, and he's building dominoes. I did ask him, the one who doesn't like to be photographed, I did clear that I could use this picture. He's building these 3D domino structures, and he said at 16 that giftedness is not a gift. It is hard work, curiosity, and a bit of nonconformity. And I really think that he puts that very well. Each of those three things. It does take hard work, even if you're gifted, because you have some idealism and some high bar for excellence and drive. And yet it does take hard work to get there. We can't forget that part of it. And we need to normalize that. And this incredible, insatiable curiosity. And in our families, you might have already guessed, a bit of nonconformity, which I try to lean on my well-developed sense of humor to really embrace. Here's a chance for you to interact with us at the very beginning of this presentation and just see how this Menti works, and let us know which feels most true for your child right now. And you can pick up to three. I think this is meaningful because if you deeply understand where your children are and that they are living out these paradoxes every day, and perhaps you're seeing some of yourself in there, then you can relate to them, right? You can deeply connect with them, and you can maybe see it in your own life and model for them how you navigate forward. Because truly, what we're doing in advocacy is helping our children find and create an environment that allows them to develop from the inside out into exactly who they're meant to be. Well, I see a lot of, it's pretty evenly split. Oh, more are joining in. 15 out of 20 of you have responded. This is really cool. I really appreciate being connected with you right now. So thank you for taking the time to do that. So where are we going today? This is my logo. As Lori mentioned, I'm a mindset and performance coach. So you might see a lot of the scientist part of me coming out in the coaching side, but it's both art and science that I try to bring. And so, yes, we do have an aim. I'm hoping to offer you two things. One is a little bit of, I guess, the beginnings of your own parenting philosophy, because that has helped me stay grounded when I'm advocating for my children. I know what I think and what I believe, and that really matters. And I think younger parents today, I'm a Gen X parent, younger parents today may not realize that it's okay, and in fact, they should have their own parenting philosophy. So I hope that you will have the space today, the intellectual space to really tap into what yours is, because you do have innate wisdom from being deeply immersed with your own children. And then secondly, I do hope to offer you a plan for advocating at school with really specific tactics, okay? I also have a bit of a character flaw. That's alliteration. So you'll see, yes, 5 things start with A. It's not like I sat there 15 minutes and tried to come up with it. It literally fell out of my head that way. So I hope you'll excuse me for that. In true coach fashion, I would love to connect with you about where you would really like to go today. What would you like to walk away with? And so here's your chance to offer your own input on what you really want to leave with. And you'll have the opportunity to take some notes. I have a Google Drive set up. I think I forgot to drop the link, but I don't know if Lori perhaps can find it while she's multitasking and can put it in the chat. There are note slides that you can refer to. All right, we're going to show the responses here. You'd really like to walk away with, this is so cool, strategies for helping your child deal with perfectionism and anxiety. Wow, they're all pretty close. Clarity on their learning environment, ways you can augment, and specific steps to take to build your own confidence in advocating for your child. Well, good news. Hopefully you'll come away with all of those. Okay. So as I was thinking about where you all are today, I just wanted to connect with you and share with you a little bit about what I have experienced, because maybe you're seeing the same thing. My kids truly value autonomy, most of all. And it's unfortunate because the school environment very often is at odds with that. The school environment is very often about compliance, um, showing that you are competent and not necessarily being able to express the full range of your gifts. There's always this show what you know before you can move on. I remember my son being in kindergarten, and I tried to explain that to him, as we were going home from school, me pushing the younger son in a jogging stroller, and my older son was on his bike as we were jogging home. And I remember very clearly trying to explain that that's just how it works. I can tell you, I grew increasingly dissatisfied with that answer. I don't think that's how it should be, but that is how the schools often work. Um, you'll see kids in line, just keep moving when a little one stoops down to go look at something that's on the ground. It's difficult for educators, it's difficult for busy parents to take the time to really stoop to the child's level and engage with the world the way they're seeing it. But I encourage you every moment that you can, it means something. I've also found that some hot buttons for my kids are privacy, very intense privacy, even the wisdom that I learned from my children, especially my older son. I am not at liberty to attribute it to him, but just such incredible wisdom. And I'm so grateful for learning from them. So you may also see that. I heard through the SANG organization, you may be members or you may not have heard of SANG yet. I am a SANG facilitator, and that's in fact how I came to learn about this amazing academy. There are many different programs through SANG, but one of them was with a psychologist who serves gifted individuals only and has for 20 years. And he mentioned that this was a theme. And that just really resonated with me. It made me feel less alone, that intense privacy is really something that I have to deal with here. Self-discovery and discovery of their own ways to do things is so important. A high bar for excellence, walking the talk, strength. My older son is a strongman. My younger son is a boxer and hockey player. They both grew up playing hockey. And so physical strength is also something that is valuable to those two young men, but also to me. And it's interesting that I think this intense privacy um, also relates to the desire for autonomy, no one influencing their thoughts. I just noticed that I put privacy up there twice. Silly me. They really detest two things, which I think is interesting, compliments and being corrected. So when I'm parenting, I have to keep that in mind and be gracious about that and change my approach. And that is one of the things we will cover today is modify my own approach when I recognize it's a hot button for them. So my parenting philosophy, just a few little things, novelty, flexibility, and humor are key. Kids are not projects. I am a tremendous doer and a tremendous project manager. And I tried to muscle my oldest child through high school and, missing assignments and crumpled papers in the backpack. And, it took a lot. I'm pretty thick-skulled maybe. It took a lot for me to unwind that. And that is actually when I became a coach, when I was literally on my knees in our bedroom, which also serves as the gym. And I remember looking up at him when he was not convinced he actually even needed to graduate high school and he didn't even need his GED, even though he already had 36 college credits done and he had already accelerated a year. He skipped fifth grade. I remember being in tears and thinking, how can this be? How can this be? Everything that I have done to optimize school, to make it okay, to make it be a place that, where we could boost the good and reduce the harm. Here we are, and he doesn't even need a GED to do what he wants to do. And I realized I'm completely out. There's nothing more I can do. I have to hand his life back to him. He was 16 at the time. I wish I had known earlier how to do that, how to parent with a bit more of that sentiment in me. And I hope that some of that will come through today in this talk. Maybe you're already there. And I just tend to be such a high achiever, performance-minded person that it took me a long time to learn it. But if even one or two of you is resonating with this and can offer you some, I guess, hope that it is possible to parent lightly and with a loose rein. I ride horses, such that your child can find their own way without the fear that I was parenting with, that they would not find any way at all, and their lives would not amount to what they had hoped. I hope this time together gives you some confidence that it is possible to do both. So thinking about what your kids value most, that's interesting. I see a couple people. Privacy is surfacing among you guys as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to share these. As I was reflecting on the RSVPs, I'll let these gather up and share a little bit more about what we learned from you before you joined us today. It seemed like in reviewing all of your responses, stress in the family system is something that 9 out of 10 of you said was a factor. When you have gifted, twice exceptional, intense individuals in the home, more than likely, you parents also are interesting people, and that can create quite a lot of stress in the family system. So you're not alone there. Um, Many of you want to understand more about the gifted and 2E profile. Social and emotional needs like perfectionism, anxiety, and intensity ranked very high. Motivation and underachievement also surfaced, and that was true in our family. Underachievement is something that, gosh, for so long I felt some shame about because I highly value education, both my husband and I do. But when you have a child in a school environment that is not meeting their intellectual needs, then it's very easy for that young person to disengage and see no value whatsoever in doing the work. And then here you are as a parent saying, I have a gifted person, and you're like the one or two people in the room saying, this isn't working. Meanwhile, everyone else is saying, oh, my child needs more challenge. My child needs honors classes. And it just can be crushing. So if you're that one or two parents and you're in that situation with a highly unmotivated individual, you have a really unique adventure in front of you because it will require all of these things that you see surfacing on the screen, and in particular, curiosity, respect, an understanding of their need for autonomy, to allow you to craft just the right environment for them and advocate effectively at school. You may have to break the system. I say the people that I serve are creators, combiners, and disruptors. You, as a parent, will need to learn how to be a diplomatic disruptor. So, thank you again for all these responses. So, I tend to see things as a scientist. I do look for causality. When I see something perplexing, I do think about what in the world is going on here. And I also have quite a bit of creativity. And one of the things that is so meaningful to me is when metaphors pop out like a butterfly out of the chrysalis and just smack me in the face with recognition. And you can see my son with a fresh little monarch butterfly. This is us in Hawaii raising monarchs. And I spent so much time studying these caterpillars, just fascinated by how they first take a J shape and then they wiggle and squirm as they create their chrysalis. And then what happens next is they digest themselves into a soup, their own soup. An enzyme is released that takes that whole body and digests it, but not everything is broken down into the soup. There are imaginal cells that are left, and these imaginal cells contain everything that's needed to build the butterfly. And when I think about your child and I think about how they're going to emerge on their own and spread their wings and pump fluid out into those wings and be ready to fly on their own, know that within your child are imaginal cells. We're just not always sure exactly what they are as parents, but you're there to observe and to immerse yourself in their lives and to understand and feed them. Just keep feeding them. The monarchs love milkweed. I remember sending my mom out for milkweed. Mom, we need more milkweed for these guys. So just know that all of your work and it exploring and offering different things to them and immersive experiences is going to touch those little imaginal cells that they have within them. And through that, they will learn what they're really called to do. Now, I promised to try to organize my thoughts today by three theories, two tools, and a takeaway of your choosing. And so this is the first kind of aggregation of theories. I'm fascinated by developmental psychology, and you'll have in your annotated bibliography, which will be in the Google Drive, don't worry, everything is in there with links to these studies, but you'll see noted in small print and italics, you'll see some of the developmental psychologists and one researcher, Waldinger, who have informed my view of the normal course of a person emerging right into their fully formed butterfly. So at the very beginning in that soup over here with these imaginal cells on the left of my screen is a time, I think, roughly between K-12, maybe up into the 20s, where you're living fully, taking risks, you're experimenting. And yes, you are quitting consciously things that don't really fit. You're paying attention to that. That's the time of identity formation. And that can take any amount of time. Erickson divides it up into, I believe, 7 different periods. I am not a psychologist. This is not my area of expertise. So this is just a broad overview. But then towards the middle of life, roughly where we are and we're parenting, we're interested in meaning making. We're making sense of our lives. We're making sense of those ups and downs. We're looking to make an impact, right? And for many of us, we're still doing career exploration. We're having to pivot. We're having to figure out what can we do now. We may be trying to figure out how to balance raising children who have needs. And how can we possibly do that in the context of a dual income family? Maybe we can change some things around. Maybe we actually should move. Maybe one of us should stay home and focus on the child. And how can we make that work? I know that this is a difficult time for families, especially families who have gifted and twice exceptional kids trying to figure out what makes the most sense. So you are in the thick of that. And then towards the end of life, it is so interesting how we move from very self-focused as little kids and our needs to a much richer and more expansive and interconnected self that really is finding meaning through connection with others, universality and benevolence, and our own legacy. So I find that kind of interesting, that progression. It also aligns quite well with the coaching framework that I offer people, which is 7 levels of energy. And that highest level of energy is all about objectivity, pure passion, and connection with others in the flow state, which when people are really thriving and they're living at those higher levels of energy, which I'll show you in just a second, they really are more focused really on connection with others and less focused on myself and my story and what's holding me back. But a blend of all of these energy levels is important to our identity formation, and paying attention to emotional unrest is important because it is a good clue that something's off. So this is up here not to digest in the moment. This is up here to show you what's hanging out in my Google Drive for you. You don't need to take notes. I tried to put everything on this one slide. And then there's also a slide that you'll be able to download that has a place for you to take some notes and make your own plan. Okay. If there's anything burning in the Q&A, Lori, just feel free to come off because now we're going to delve into the 5 A's that I came up with. I'm going to try to move fairly quickly, keeping an eye on the time so we have time for Q&A. But if there's anything burning, by all means, I do not mind being interrupted. You may not want to hear me droning on. But let's start with authority. You have way more authority than you actually think. I heard somebody tell me that, and I was like, that's actually true. You parents really do have a lot of authority. And I think one of the reasons that my immersion in volunteering in the classroom, those 500 hours serving on advisory boards, offering to do pro bono data analysis, all of that gave me not only the language to use with educators and with school systems, but also a sense of just what I can ask for and just what is my right as a parent. Am I allowed to come in and observe classrooms? Yes, as a matter of fact, I am. And here's the rules. So it just frees you up to ask for things, which is one of the other A's, as you probably noticed. But you do have quite a lot of authority. Your children have the right to a free and appropriate public education. You may be curious about learning more about how seat time is funded, and do your children really need to be on campus for every single hour? They may not need to be. There may be ways for you to do a hybrid program, which we'll talk about in the augmentation. The acceleration policy, how do they accelerate children? How do they determine which children should have content specific or full grade acceleration? So research your state regulations. I tend to print and carry the written regulations, the couple paragraphs about gifted identification and service. You should also be looking into your local school district's plan. In ours, it's called a plan for the gifted. There's also one for special education. If your children are twice exceptional, then you really probably should be looking at both of them. I know it's a lot. Think about an advisory committee that might make sense to join and serve as a parent volunteer. And I think this might be an oddball one that not many people will do, perhaps. But I think if you have the opportunity to move, I know some of our folks in our SENG groups have been military, then take the opportunity to ask for an informational interview with the principal, because I've learned that principals really do control what happens in the school. They determine which rules they will bend to serve interesting children and which ones they really won't because they're too afraid to stick their neck out and ask for something. And this isn't necessarily on the principal. I'm not blaming the principal. It's a culture of the district, perhaps, that some principals feel comfortable asking for things that bend the rules and others don't. So you may want to think about interviewing the principal of the school you might consider attending and ask for anecdotes, ask open-ended questions about how they have problem solved a child that has some interesting learning needs and just see if they have any case studies that they can are proud to share with you and what kind of their attitude is in sharing those. Did it seem like they were excited about it, what they were able to do for the child, or did it seem like it was something that they did with a lot of hesitation? Now, this is where we get into energy, your approach. So the research is clear here. There's research both on parents and parent-teacher dyads, and also on professionals, so educators and special educators, all of the folks serving our 2E kids, that we statements and solution finding is obviously the way to go. And this is actually not it's not outside the norm. It's not outside what you should expect. It is part of the pre-professional education programs. Perhaps not everywhere, but there's enough literature right now suggesting that this really should be. And I'd be surprised if there weren't a concerted effort in many very good schools, teacher training academies where this is happening. So really cultivate this as much as you can. Don't be afraid to ask, but just think about how are we asking. I know for me, early on, I was pretty intimidated and I felt like I really needed to game out what I was going to ask for. But the more comfortable I got with the language of school and education, the easier it was for me to come side by side with professionals and ask, what are their biggest challenges and how can we come together as parents to solve them? One good example of this is founding a program together with the principal of our elementary school to ensure that the advanced kids had an extension opportunity, small group extensions led by parent volunteers who were trained by me to offer small group instruction in math. And so we brought in engineers and retired librarians, lots of people who really cared about kids. And they brought in their own real world problems and got together with 5 kids at a whiteboard and problem solved together while the teachers were able to focus on the kids who needed remediation and needed to be brought up to grade level. That is a clear win-win. And to be able to join together with that really forward-thinking principle to offer that was just one of the highlights of my immersion in advocacy. And then that led to pro bono data analysis, that then led to an understanding of the need for differentiation, which is teachers being able to ask the kind of questions in class that allow access for kids at all levels of ability, some master teacher training for differentiation. And then we ended up seeing the fruit of all of that work in this district was that the gifted kids were not stymied and stagnating. They were actually growing. At our baseline, the gifted kids had 0 or negative growth compared to the kids who started the year on grade level. And then a year later, after implementing all of this, it was very interesting. The gifted kids were able to actually grow. So that was wonderful. Okay. I'm trying to figure out how to advance my little slide. My little button here is not the right color. Whew. There we go. Okay, note to self, little gray buttons do not become white when your background is a darker color. So I mentioned that I'm an energy coach, and I offer to folks who come to me for coaching this as a framework for understanding what causes us stress. And this is just very high level. And then what allows us to operate at the highest energy levels. And so this is just an easy way to remember these energy levels from the darker ones where we just feel like, gosh, nothing is working right. Why even bother? Nothing's going to change. That kind of helpless area too. I've got to fight for myself is level two. I've got to control the situation. I have to fight for myself. Level three is where, and three and four, frankly, is where a lot of us parents live. And level three is all about making the best of a situation, right? Finding the silver lining, coping with it. And level four is care and compassion and service for others. We just go through that all the time, all day long. But without having good boundaries and care and compassion for ourselves, sometimes we can get overloaded, overwhelmed, and then it's like chutes and ladders. If you know that game, we end up back down here in the lower energy levels, which I'm calling, as you can see on this slide, catabolic. The catabolic is wearing down, tearing down, and it's like driving with your foot on the brake and the gas at the same time. It really can make you feel exhausted. So when I'm working with folks, we try to identify what are the thoughts and situations that cause us to feel so worn down. And then we operate at a higher energy level through that awareness and being able to consciously choose how we're going to respond. And this, understanding this framework has changed my life. It's changed how and whether or not I take things personally and take things on. Um, a lot of my folks and me as well just felt like I was walking through life with a lot of weight on my shoulders, that I needed to fix everything and that I wasn't being understood, I wasn't being seen, and things were beyond my control, which of course they are. When you step into a space of accepting that and looking for ways to connect with other people and tap into their wisdom, then everything changed. We really, our whole family environment changed. And it has been such a remarkable difference over the last 3 years. And it's enriched our lives, it's changed our marriage. There's a lot less judgment from myself to my kids, also less judgment of myself. Our kids are learning how to integrate this as well, though they don't want to hear from me as coach. That's okay. I can still role model it, but it just has made such a dramatic difference. So when you think about approaching a teacher, of going in and having a school meeting, sometimes these lower level energy thoughts can come up and cause us to have an energetic presence that is maybe putting people on the defensive before we even open our mouths. I mentioned that I work with horses. My energetic presence is something that they sense without me opening my mouth, without me doing anything. They watch, right? They are such keenly observant creatures. So I grew up with horses, and I know this when I'm walking into a pasture, but it's so easy to forget when you're walking into a school building how much your presence conveys to folks. Yeah, I appreciate where you are on these responses. For those of you who are just listening, perhaps what we're seeing on this slide is folks are thinking about an upcoming school meeting and just thinking about what they hope to accomplish and what they imagine will happen. And I think I allowed you to pick multiple responses in this. I don't recall. I hope I did. Because the point being, energy is a palette. We're never in just one energy level. We are always pulling from a palette of energy levels. And the trick is to get that palette just right for your objective. So maybe we need to bring along a little bit of that level two fight for myself in order to get up the courage to advocate for our children and to say, no, you know what? I'm not waiting another year, right? I'm not going to just let this slide. I am going to advocate, but I'm also going to bring along some level five energy, which is very analytical, but also very growth oriented and that win-win solution finding mindset. We don't have time today to go into all six energy levels in any kind of depth, but this is something that if you worked with me one-on-one or in a group for coaching, I would love to share with you, and we could role play different ways of approaching various challenging situations, even with our kids. All right, I hope everybody's doing well. We are on Ask. So this is, I think, the fun part. Once you have immersed yourself in understanding your authority, then you know what to ask for. You will learn what data might be helpful. And I strongly recommend getting this information before you meet with the teachers. You want to know where your child is at the beginning of the year. So one thing that you might think about doing right now as the year wraps up is go back to the beginning of the year and see what you have and start creating a portfolio. If you haven't already done that, then and just go back and see in your parent view portals. That's what it is for us. It's parent view, but I'm sure you have your own data dashboard. Go see under documents if there's anything in there. Sometimes it might be under testing and see if you have any Lexiles for reading. They also go by GRL, DRAs. There's maybe some for writing fluency, for math. It's hard to know what your school would have. In Virginia, it's standards of learning, SOLs. You might also have in California, I think they use MAP, measures of academic progress. Those are great because there is no ceiling on those. So you can tell by your child's score if they're actually ready for algebra. I think those are amazing. I really loved MAP. Um, I also wanted to share with you, if you don't already know it, formative versus summative. Formative is used to guide instruction right now, whereas summative is, and Lori, I know you're a teacher, so you may want to correct me, but summative is the end of the course or a midway point. What have we learned so far? So you may want to ask for some formative tests to see if they're placing your child in the right group, for instance. They could use that for ability grouping. Um, for those of you who have children with special educational needs and they have perhaps some folks who are in the classroom helping them, they may also be tracking things. So you may want to ask what's in the IEP and the 504, what's being tracked and who is tracking it. There are also ways for you to measure these yourself through ALEX or IXL or CON. So bring your own data. And then I strongly recommend classroom observations and talking to your child. Classroom observations, it's interesting how few parents that I work with actually do this. You can learn so much by observing a classroom, even for 20 minutes. And I created for myself, and I'm happy to share it if people are interested, a classroom observation form that is essentially what somebody who's observing a teacher would use. So another professional observing a teacher, because I wanted something to guide my observations. You can see if it's a super stimulating environment, how well the classroom is managed. Are there a lot of distractions? Could that be causing the sensory sensitivities to go haywire and cause a lot of distraction and stress? So I highly encourage you to go observe the classroom. And if you can't do that because maybe your child really doesn't want you in there, ask a school counselor who you feel like you have a very good connection with and who would understand your child, somebody you have rapport with to go and do that for you and let you know. There usually is in a school, you can find somebody who understands you, who gets you, who resonates with you. It's probably another gifted person. Find somebody in the school who didn't like school themselves, right? Find somebody who would really appreciate your child's challenge and ask them if they could go in and observe for about 20 minutes. Another alternative is observe another section. So say the child is in middle or high school and they're rotating classrooms. Go observe another section. Your child isn't in there, but you can still see the teaching style. All right, augment. We're almost done, folks. We have augment and autonomy, and it looks like we're going to have a little time for Q&A, so that's good. I'm going to move through this pretty quickly because I think that you will find your own creative ideas. This is just what our family did. One example from elementary school when my child was young and really not thriving and coming home at loose ends and devolving quickly and dysregulating. It, I think, had a lot to do with school being extremely boring and him trying to manage himself all day long. And I was already supplementing math instruction to try to make it more interesting, but I realized that the same part of the brain that appreciates math also appreciates language and music. So I added that to our mix as well. There are just so many things you can do to offer your child a stimulating environment. I mean, Rubik's Cubes. I cannot say enough about Rubik's Cubes. They don't require battery. They take forever to learn. You can compete with yourself with speed, and they're portable. I mean, there are so many things that you might find are just the ticket for your child that might make them be able to get through an experience that is not ideal until you're able to advocate effectively and switch things up. I have so much to tell you about what we did in school all the way through that I think it actually would make sense to save that for a personalized learning pathway workshop where we could talk through what might work for your child. And I could share with you what we did to create a hybrid environment for our older son so that he could thrive even in a public school. This is just a picture of being on a plane. This is a typical trip. You can see there's so much here. There's Rubik's Cubes, there's dominoes, there's problem-solving worksheet. It's, I think, one of those great riddles. I keep on trucking here. So the one thing I really would love for you to leave with, self-determination theory. This builds on the developmental pathway that I had before, but I think this kind of transcends all, and it's really hit home for me. The reason I picked this out to leave with you is many parents say that this actually gave them something to hang on to that was clear and concise. So the three pillars of human flourishing are autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And this is from Ryan in DC. I like, as I mentioned before, alliteration. It helps me remember. So choice, competence, and connection. And so these three things are ways that you could think about your daily environment. You could think about what you're seeing in school, why your child might be refusing to do the work. Maybe it's their really innate need for autonomy and self-determination is not being allowed to flourish. They can't express it. Maybe they are having a little difficulty on the competence one with the struggle that it naturally takes to develop skill, and we can help them there. And then connection, relatedness, that's so vital for young people to be able to manage through and self-regulate by learning how you regulate and how you model when it is difficult to learn something new and really accept the process of mastery, being a bit messy. Okay. This slide is based on the theory Mihai, uh, gosh, this name is so difficult, and I swore I was going to remember how to say it. You see the name at the bottom left here? Csikszentmihalyi. I absolutely love his work. He is a Hungarian-born psychologist and the father of flow theory. He also wrote a couple great books. One of them is Beyond Boredom and Anxiety. And this slide here is a great graphic that you might consider sharing with a teacher. The interesting thing here for you to note is that flow requires challenge and skill to be equivalent. And so say you start in a job that you have no skill in yet. Let's just say you're in a grocery store. So you're over here where skill is zero, and challenge is high. Depending on how challenging it is, you might end up here where the frustration is in this top left quadrant. This is going to be hard for anybody just listening, but it is in the Google Drive. As you move along this x-axis and you build up your skill and challenges on the y-axis, you'll see that you'll come into a place where challenge and skill are balanced and you're in the middle of this flow stream. As you continue building your skill on this green line here, you'll eventually get to a place where you need a bit more challenge and you're bored. So this is an opportunity for the teacher to offer differentiation and allow your child to get back into the flow stream. So you want to look for behaviors out here that indicate I am entertaining myself in whatever way that I can because I'm actually terribly bored and it's causing me anxiety and frustration. You might also have an entertainer who just has a great sense of humor and that's how they keep themselves from being bored. Or you might have somebody who is highly active, has a high psychomotor overexcitability. That may be what they do over here. So you add some challenge and you get back into the flow. And then again, you repeat the same pattern. As skill advances, you need to add some more challenge. I have some suggestions on this slide, but we're running pretty close to time, so I want to stay on track. But your job as a parent is to use your authority and your knowledge of your child to help find those opportunities to build in more challenge and to be with your child side by side as they learn to self-regulate while they're building up the skill, because that does take time and it can be difficult for kids who have such high standards for themselves. I learned just yesterday about perfectionism while I was riding a horse that didn't want to go over these raised poles over here. She did the first time while they're up much higher. She did the first time perfectly, and then as you do, I went over it again and things devolved from there. And when I got off, she yawned quite a bit. So this image on the right is her yawning, and that's how a horse down regulates from a stressful time. I gave her a hug when I got off because she had essentially decided that she wasn't doing anymore. She did what you all said some of your kids do, and that is to get anxious and then refuse to go over it. Now, you don't want to bully a horse. At least I don't. That's not my style. Bully a horse into doing something that it has decided it's not comfortable doing. I took it all the way back down, broke it down to just poles on the ground, not up high, and started over, let her walk over it with a really long rein, just helped her approach it and understand what it was and understand what I was asking her to do. And then we built back up from there, and we did end up on a very good note. But I noticed because she was having to do all this yawning once I got off and gave her a hug, that there was something stressful there that I hadn't picked up on. And it made me think about perfectionism and what we see with our kids and what causes stress. No one likes being corrected. This horse is really smart. She's a really smart mare. She didn't want my constant feedback that she wasn't quite doing what I wanted. She was taking it in her own horse way as judgment, and she also wasn't able to do what she wanted to do. In her mind, the quickest way through all those things was to jump them. That was not what I was hoping would happen because if you're trotting along and suddenly jumping over something, like 8 feet wide, it's quite destabilizing, let's say. So it was just a very interesting experience to see what she went through and through all those nonverbals and then relate it back to this conversation we're having about perfectionism. So what can we do about that? I'm leaving you with two tools, two things I'd like to offer you from my coaching practice. I hope these are helpful. When I talked to my older son about perfectionism this morning, this definitely resonated. I was making some mental notes and then jotted everything he had to say down so that I could remember what he said. And it aligned perfectly with this. I was really surprised to see. In many ways, not surprised because he's very wise. So performance orientation is a mindset where external standards are being layered onto you and you're uh, organizing yourself according to an external reward. You may be afraid of failure. You may be thinking in terms of binary outcomes. Something's good or bad, or I need to win versus lose. Some of you mentioned that you have kids who love to play instruments, but they get nervous before a recital. Or I think we had some soccer players who were nervous before a game. Um, I have athletes too, and sometimes when they're in a dry spell, they're not as productive as they would like on the rink, on the ice. They can get a little bit down on themselves unless we reframe how we're thinking about the outcomes. Being in competition with others or a hyper focus on the outcome can all lead to reactivity. In contrast, so that's the performance orientation. It's all external and binary. Mastery orientation is what the greatest athletes in the world do, the greatest performers in the world, the artists who lose themselves in that flow state I just described. Mastery orientation is organized around an internal drive, your own standards. This is the holy grail, right? That's why self-determination theory is so meaningful to me because it is the holy grail. It is what allows our children to develop their own internal motivation, right? To tap into those imaginal selves that are so meaningful to them and so directive about what it is that they really love doing. You find satisfaction in the process. Progress is the reward. My son said this morning, detaching from the outcome and accepting that it's difficult as you move along towards mastery of a skill. And then focusing on competence, not competition, and your own personal growth and a sense of learning from flaws and mistakes. Now, how do we do that? Through the second tool here. One approach that you could try is thinking about A, B, and C goals. I do this every time I step into the ring with a horse. I think about my A goal would be I spot something in the ring that I'm really addicted to jumping right now. And because it is such an adrenaline rush to jump. So I'll pick a jump in the ring and I'll be like, it would be really cool if we could go over that, or we could do this line, or we could hit all the correct leads, or whatever it is. So the A goal is my ideal. The B goal is what could I accept? What would I be happy with? And then a C goal is what you put in place when neither of those two things happens and you decide what can I learn and apply next time? So I'd encourage you to think about your own kids and how you could use this with your own kids and see if that offers them a framework for building that internal fortitude to be able to handle the messiness of developing mastery. All right. This is a time for you to reflect on where you were when we started and what you would like to take away, some specific strategies for developing confidence in your ability to advocate for your child, ways to deal with perfectionism. I'm going to be quiet for just a second. I think that you can vote on these as well. Okay, here's another opportunity for you to vote. What would be most beneficial to you at this point? We can do hot seat coaching. Hot seat coaching is one of you is very brave, and we would turn the recording off for this. One of you would be very brave and come on live and talk about a challenge that you're facing, and we would work through it. We could also go to Q&A, in which case we would also not record that so that you would be more comfortable sharing your specific situation. See where we are. I'm seeing Q&A is what folks would like to do. Awesome. While we are setting that up, I'm going to just show this. So if you would like to reach out or perhaps join our SENG group, we have one starting June 23rd. Just go to my website, trainmyaim.com, and you can join. You can also reach out with questions, follow up, anything, and I would love to hear from you. I believe that you can also include, this is in your Google Drive, which you'll have access to. And that's it. You should be able to keep recording your votes while Lori and I get set up for Q&A.